There is a moment coming for every person who will ever live. You will not schedule it. You will not be ready for it. 1 second you are here, breathing, thinking, worried about tomorrow, and the next second, your heart stops. And then something happens. Most people think they already know what Jesus said about death, heaven, hell, judgment, the basics. But there are things Jesus said, specific words he chose, details he slipped into parables, that almost nobody is talking about. And when you look at them closely, they don't just fill in the picture, they completely change it. Once you hear them, you will never think about dying the same way again. Stay with me, because point number 7 contradicts almost everything you've been taught about death being the end. Here's the honest part. Jesus never gave a literal 3-minute timeline. That's my way of describing the threshold, the narrow window between your last breath and wherever you wake up next. But he said more about that threshold than almost anyone realizes. Who meets you, where you're taken, what you keep, and what gets decided in an instant that can never be undone. And I want to be specific about the source. Not Paul, not church tradition, not revelation in general. Jesus, the words he personally chose, in the moments he chose them, 10 of them. Some are comforting, some are frightening. And the last one quietly changes the meaning of everything that comes before it. Let's start at the exact second your life ends. Jesus is dying. Nailed beside him is a criminal, a thief with nothing left to offer. And the thief simply asks to be remembered. Jesus answers, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Today, not someday, not at the end of the world, not after 1,000 years asleep in the ground. The Greek word is semeron, this very day. But here's what almost nobody notices. The earliest Greek manuscripts had no punctuation at all, no commas, no spaces. The people who added the commas centuries later did it according to their own beliefs, so some traditions move the comma, "I tell you today, you will be with me," which pushes the promise into the far future and erases the immediacy completely. 1 comma, and it decides whether you wake up the instant you die or wait until the end of everything. Look closer at that same sentence. Jesus didn't say heaven, he said paradise, paradisos. It's not even originally a religious word. It's Persian. It meant a walled royal garden, the private, guarded park of a king, entered only through a gate. It's the same word used for the Garden of Eden. So sit with the image he is painting. You don't drift off into an open, empty sky. You are admitted, through a gate, into an enclosed garden that belongs to a king. You don't drift there. You arrive. The moment after death, in Jesus' own words, has a wall around it and a door. Who takes you there? Jesus answered that too in a story about a poor beggar named Lazarus. When the beggar dies, Jesus says he was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. Carried. Not he went, not he wandered toward the light. He was escorted, lifted, and delivered, as if the soul on its own doesn't know the way and isn't meant to travel it alone. Whatever it looks like from the outside, a hospital bed, a car, a quiet room, the instant you let go, you are not abandoned to the dark. You are picked up. In that same story, Jesus tells us about a rich man who dies too. And this is where it gets unsettling. The rich man has no body yet. The resurrection hasn't happened. And still, Jesus says he can remember his 5 brothers back home. He can see across a great distance. He can feel thirst. He can reason and plead and argue. Every part of what made him a person, his memory, his personality, his awareness, fully switched on. Seconds after death, with no body at all. This is the detail that should stop you. Jesus does not describe death as being erased. He describes it as waking up completely yourself. Nothing about you went to sleep. Back to the two men. One wakes up comforted, the other wakes up in torment, and the rich man begs for just one drop of water. The answer is chilling. Between us and you, a great chasm has been fixed so that none may cross. Fixed. Already set. In place the moment he arrived. There is no crossing over in Jesus' telling, no second lap, no slow climb from one side to the other. You land where you land, and the chasm is already there, waiting. That is a hard word, but Jesus said it plainly, and he said it on purpose. Jesus told another short story about a wealthy farmer who builds bigger barns and tells himself he's set for life. That night, God says to him, "You fool, this night your soul is required of you." The word translated required, apaitosin, is a money word. It's the verb for calling in a debt, demanding back something that was only ever loaned. Read it again. Your soul is not something you own, it's something you're holding, and it can be recalled on a night you did not choose, a night you assumed was just an ordinary evening with plans still on the calendar. The farmer probably had tomorrow completely mapped out. He did not have tomorrow at all. Here's the point I promised, the one that reframes everything. Jesus repeatedly insisted that people who believe in him never actually experience death. Standing at the grave of his friend, he says, "Whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." Never die. And over, when Jesus stands over a dead body, he says something odd. Of a dead girl. She is not dead, but sleeping. Of Lazarus, 4 days in the tomb, our friend has fallen asleep. He keeps using one word, koimao, to sleep. And that word gave us another one you use without thinking. Cemetery. In the original Greek, koimaterion, it literally means a dormitory, a sleeping place, a room where people are laid down to wake up. Jesus doesn't call the grave a destination. He calls it a bed. We picture judgment as a courtroom far in the future. But Jesus said this, "Whoever does not believe is condemned already." Which means those first moments after death may not be where your verdict gets decided. They may be where you simply discover what was already true. Not a trial, a revealing. That single word, already, moves the most important decision of your existence out of the distant future and into the life you're living right now. We're almost at the last 2 points. And I promised the ending reframes everything. But quickly, which of these has surprised you most so far? Drop the number in the comments. I genuinely read them, and it tells me which of these to go deeper on next time. If this is your kind of content, subscribe, because there's far more of this to cover. Now, one more before the final point. We assume the afterlife is timeless, that the dead float in some eternal, unaware now. But in the vision Jesus gave to John, that's not the picture. John sees the souls of those who had already died, and they are not asleep. They cry out one question: how long? They are conscious. They are aware that history is still unrolling on the earth without them. They are given white robes and told to wait a little longer. Waiting requires time, which means whatever those first moments after death are, they are not a blank. There is awareness in it, anticipation in it, a sense that something is still coming. And now, the last point, the one that quietly rewires everything else. At the Transfiguration, his disciples suddenly saw Moses and Elijah appear beside Jesus. Moses had been dead for over 1,000 years, Elijah for centuries. There were no portraits, no photographs, no descriptions of their faces, and yet the disciples immediately knew who they were. No introduction. They simply knew. Whatever recognition looks like after death, it appears to be instant and complete, even of people you never met in this life. The people waiting for you will not be strangers. And then one final detail, almost nobody connects to any of this. Jesus speaks of a second death, which quietly tells you something. The death you fear, the stopping of your heart, is only the first one. In Jesus' framing, it was never the final threshold. The first death is a doorway, not a wall. So here's where we've landed. The moment of death is immediate. Today. You don't travel alone. You arrive somewhere specific, with a boundary and an entrance. You arrive fully yourself, memory and awareness intact. The chasm is already fixed. Your life was alone recalled on a night already set. For believers, what looks like death from the outside isn't experienced as death from the inside. The verdict may already exist before you cross. The dead are awake, recognition is instant, and the first death is not the last one. That's not the picture most people carry in their heads, and almost all of it comes straight from the words Jesus personally chose. The question he keeps pressing isn't really about then, it's about now. Because if the door is already this close, the only thing that changes the other side of it is what you do on this side. Which side of the chasm are you preparing for? If you want to go deeper on what Jesus said about what comes after death, there's a video right here that walks into territory this one didn't touch. Watch that next. I think you'll find it just as surprising.